Making a game isn't easy and typically isn't cheap, especially for a major company. There are thousands of man-hours and hundreds of employees that have to get paid, costing hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars to finish one game. This isn't even including marketing. Not to mention that they can't just make good games, they have to make a profitable one to satisfy investors, higher-ups, and publishers. This is the sad reality of why some game series just stop getting made for a while. Either profits are low or non-existent, or there is just nobody willing or wanting to take the risk. It's easy for fans to look at companies and tell them to make another F-Zero or a Castlevania and that it'll print money. But it's easy to say those things when it isn't our millions of dollars at risk of going away with nothing to show for it. So we go 10 or 15 or more years without a new entry in a series we love because companies aren't willing to take the risk. This is where indie games step in to fill the void. Want a new F-Zero game? Fast RMX on Switch. More 3D platformers? There are hundreds of good ones out there now, and always more being announced. But by far, one of the most common are Metroidvanias. There are so many out there, both good and bad, that it almost makes indie games feel like a love letter to the genre. Today I'm going to be covering one of these games, a small Metroidvania about a cat in a mech suit, Gato Roboto. Published by Devolver Digital and developed by Doinksoft, you can get it on Switch and Steam. You play the game as a cat, Kiki. The reason for this is while Kiki's owner, Gary, was en route to investigate a distress signal, she stepped on the control panel and caused the ship to crash, pinning Gary in the process. With him unable to move and refusing to call for help due to fear of losing a promotion, it's up to Kiki to go on in his stead. You must pilot a security mech, collect upgrades, clear the issues in 3 areas, get access to the labs, find out the source of the distress signal, and escape. All of this while being in a Game Boy-esque black and white pixel art style. It's a pretty goofy and silly game overall, but it's still good fun despite its short 3 to 4 hour length. There's even an achievement for beating it in under 1 hour. Before delving deeper into the game, I want to discuss what I think makes a good Metroidvania. This isn't an end-all be-all list, and you might not even agree with me. Even if a game doesn't fit all the criteria, that doesn't mean it's a bad game or even a bad Metroidvania if it excels in other parts. It's an overall fairly loose genre, and I'm just some schmuck on the internet. Thanks to my baby boy Nerl for the idea as well. Exploration. The map should be easy to explore while also giving the player options on where to go. Even if there is only one correct path now, it doesn't mean that there shouldn't be something to see there later. Reaching an impasse should stick out in a player's head enough to make them go, "Oh, I can do that now," when they get a new upgrade. The more open-ended nature of the genre is one of its best aspects, if you ask me. Power-up based progression. Upgrades should function not only as a way to aid combat, but also as a way to progress through the map. Missiles that can blast away rubble should also be good at blasting away an enemy. This makes the game feel more like an adventure to get stronger and not just a key fetch quest. If you start the game from the beginning with all upgrades, you should be able to do most, if not all of the game in any order. One artificial roadblock isn't a big deal. Even Super Metroid has one of those with the golden boss statue in Turian, and even then, the order you defeat the bosses is in your control if you have all the upgrades. Atmosphere and variety. The world has to be interesting and visually and audibly distinct from itself. The player should be able to look somewhere and feel rewarded for it, even if it's a small detail like an animal crawling into a burrow or hearing the water dripping from a damp cave ceiling. It's not just to keep it from being boring to look at, it's also important to help with navigation. If every room looks the same or is a repeat of multiple other rooms, then the game has failed in this regard. It makes it way too easy to get lost in a bad way. Most games in the genre thankfully have a map now, which is always good and should always be an optional thing in my opinion. The issues start to come up when the game designed with the idea that they have a map, so it's okay if the rooms look similar. The more you get lost and are forced to use a map, the less time you are actually playing the game and the more it kills the flow. These are just 3 of what I think are the most important points to making a good Metroidvania. So now that I have established what I find important in the genre, let's talk about Gato Roboto and see how well it achieved these goals after we finished. The art style was simple, 2-tone pixels, not too dissimilar to what you might see on the Game Boy. It reminded me mostly of Metroid 2, just obviously a bit more modern with widescreen. The simple black and white colors are a little eye-straining for a minute, but it's quick to adjust to, and you can change the colors around by finding cartridges. It might help reduce eye strain and can actually help make certain areas feel different than others. Like using the yellow one in the reactor core always made it feel way hotter than it might in the original black and white. The readability isn't an issue either. The background is always black and color palettes usually contrast pretty well with it. This combined with the simple shapes and animations really make it easy to see what's actually on screen. There were very few times where I get hit by something I couldn't see. Despite these limitations, each area still feels different from the others and they really did well with what they had. The damp overgrown caves of the landing site don't look like the flooded plumbing of the Aqueducts. The brick-built heater core is filled with so much magma that the heat causes everything to distort. It honestly reminds me of a brick oven. The vents are covered in metal plates and are so cramped that only a cat could fit through them. It's a simple art style, but they do a good job with it. If there's one thing Metroidvanias are known for, it's the music. Sadly, while Gato Roboto doesn't have bad music, it's not really something I would listen to outside of the game. It's a lot of thumpy techno for combat and droning synths for exploration. None of it's bad, but it's just not to my taste. Something it does that I do like is after you clear the issue in each area, their theme will change. That's a nice touch and does break up the monotony of hearing the same music while clearing up the extras you can get now. My favorite is probably after you clear the heater core. Sound effects in the game are nothing to complain about. The heavy stomping of the suit and the blaster are satisfying, and nothing in the game is grating. Oh, also, there's a meow button. Very important. Being a cat, you don't have many ways to actually defend yourself against enemies, so to make up for that lack of firepower, you pilot a security suit that lets you fight back. Shooting blasters and rockets are the most basic things you can do. Blaster is your basic shot, and rockets do more damage. It could be used to rocket jump too. They're on a cooldown though, so you can't spam them. I think this is actually a great way to restrict you from using rockets too much without making you have to farm for ammo. Save points also restore health too. Keeps the pace moving rather quickly, you know? The rocket jump is actually so good you can even beat the second area before you get the spin jump. There's even an achievement for it. This wouldn't be a Metroidvania if there weren't upgrades and collectibles to find though. You have the spin jump, which works as a double jump and lets you bounce off enemies doing damage to them. There are even a couple sections where you need to bounce off of multiple of them in a row to get somewhere. Next you have the dash move, and it lets you go past certain obstacles and projectiles. It's good at letting you dodge attacks and is needed to beat the heater core boss. Later on you get an upgrade that even resets your spin jump every time you dash, so you can basically stay in the air forever. It's optional for beating the game, but it's a lot of fun to do. You get it for bringing this Frog Girl Reba all 14 cartridges, the collectible that lets you change the color palette. Bring her 7 and you get the blaster auto fire, and bring her 14 and you get the spin jump reset. I would at least get her the blaster auto fire. It's a pain to use the blaster otherwise, and it's pretty easy to get 7 of them on your own. Oh, there's also a blaster damage upgrade you get right before the heater core boss, and a rocket upgrade that lets you shoot 3 before cooling down. The only other collectibles in the game are health upgrades. There are 10 in the whole game, totaling 16 health. If you get all of these, it makes the final boss a cakewalk too. You can just face tank all the damage and not even move. Now the suit is powerful, but you can't use it everywhere. It can't enter water for one, and some places are too small for it to go. So you can get out of it and run around as just Kiki. There isn't any way to defend yourself like this and you die in one hit, but it's still useful and required about as much as the suit. You can swim, wall climb, fit in tight spaces, and even meow on command. This doesn't do anything, but I thought it was important to know. Swimming, you are also defenseless, and it's more movement based, but sometimes you can find a submarine to get in so you can fight back. You even fight a boss in it. There's no upgrades for it, but it has an auto fire and shoots as fast as you can tap too, so it's pretty good. The game actually uses both in and out of the suit pretty evenly. The aqueducts, you are mostly swimming underwater, the heater core you can't even get out of the suit, and the vents are so claustrophobic that the suit couldn't hope to fit. To make up for the lack of a suit, you can find these turrets sometimes. You can't aim them, but it will still clear paths for you and do damage. The vents boss is also really interesting. It comes at you with a barrier you blast away, and then it starts doing a huge spinning laser. You have to wall climb above, cross over, fall down, then repeat until it's your chance to fight again. Sometimes you have to take a suit somewhere without even being in it. This usually involves putting it on a platform, traversing through dangerous waters to a treadmill, then running on it to move the the suit towards you. The game really gets the most out of being in and out of the suit, and I think that's where it really shines. If I have any real complaints here, it's that being outside of the suit is way too slippery. The game otherwise feels really tight when in it. Like here, for example, I found this secret area above the computer, right? But the way up was way too high for the spin jump even with rocket jumps. So I start climbing the walls and there are these enemies there. Okay, easy enough. I will just climb up high enough to jump over them and oh, you can't make it. Okay, well I'll just wait for them to fire, then jump on the tiny gap in front of them and then jump over. Oh, I overshot it. See what I mean? It's way too slippery for me. So I finally made it to the top and what do I get? A message saying that the devs are being held hostage by Devolver Digital. I gotta go help them! So anyway, I found out later that I was just supposed to come back when I got the spin jump reset with the dash move. So I guess that wasn't a great example. Whatever, you get what I mean. I did it the wrong way and I'm proud. Enemies are solid though, they have decent variety. Some spawn other things, some can only be hurt from the back. This frog looks very offended when you hit him. Nothing to complain about there. The bosses are all pretty good too. You never really do the same thing too often. They are all this rat and a robot and range from normal fights to running away to fighting in a sub. The heater core is probably the hardest one and was definitely what I died to the most. It's not unfair or anything, I just got impatient, so it's my fault. Oh, also you fight these heater cores and they talk to you. And they're brothers? Okay, makes sense. Let's take a break before the story and go over how well the game hits the goals I set for it. 1. The game does indeed let the player explore mostly anywhere in a given area. The only restrictions are based on what abilities you have and not checking a box, besides for access to the lab, but even Super Metroid had something similar. The game does indeed have sections where you can attempt to pass, but it's impossible with your current kit. Take this section right here in the landing site. It's way too high to jump up, but maybe if I jump then blast myself higher with a rocket I could make it up? No, still not enough height. Well, maybe if I get on this platform and no, I don't think I can make it this way either. I guess I'll just go somewhere else instead. Fast forward to the Aqueducts and now I have the spin jump. And man, I can get some height with this now. Ooh, I bet I can get up that big wall now and yep, easy. It was that frustration from barely not being able to make it up there that had me remember this spot to begin with. So when I got an upgrade that would help me, yeah, that's what it's about. The game does exploration well for its scope. There aren't too many of these spots, but it's a really short game, so I don't want to hold it against it too much. 2. This is probably the simplest one to follow, so the game does it easily. After the landing site, you need to get to the Nexus, but there are rocks blocking the way and your blaster is too weak. So of course the rockets can blow them up, but after getting the rockets, you have to get past a boss to get back to the rocks. Luckily, they do a lot of damage to enemies and can let you focus on dodging while on cooldown. This boss makes a wall that you can't dodge normally, so you dash through the lava it is spewing to make it out just fine. You can also do the same with the lava that flows everywhere else too. Every upgrade you get serves a purpose for unlocking the way while also being good at keeping you alive. One part I think is weird though is that you can't enter the vents because this lava flow is blocking it. So when you get the dash, it's like, oh okay, now I can get to the vents. But no, after beating the heater core boss, you get back up there and the lava flow is gone anyway. Like functionally it's the same because I had to beat the boss anyway before getting back up, and it makes sense given the heater core cooled down. It's just that now I don't get the satisfaction of using my new ability to solve the thing blocking my progress directly. That's an outlier though. 3. The game is already fighting a losing battle when it comes to atmosphere. Being two-toned black and white does make it stand out from other games in the genre, but it can also make it struggle to stand out from itself. Having so few colors to choose from means you really have to pick up the slack in the design and sound department. You run the risk of everything blurring together into one big mess. Despite this, I think the game truly succeeds past its restrictions. I never felt like areas blended together or couldn't stand out on their own. One big thing that helps is the cartridges giving you access to different color palettes as well. Running the yellow in the heater core gives a great sense of heat. Running the blue in the Aqueducts fits the setting too. Mixing up colors like this adds so much to what the game can present, and it's all up to what you the player prefer. Of course the areas on their own are good at this too. The damp caves with fungi and vegetation growing in it at the landing site, the dripping water and the cold metal pipes of the aqueduct, the heat distortions coming off the roaring hot bricks of the heater core, the cramped vents and the tubes holding enemies that you can break and they fight back. Sometimes you can even find tables and chairs to remind you that people actually lived and worked here. The game has good set pieces, effects, visuals, and sounds to make it an atmosphere that's worth something. In conclusion, I would say the game does meet the standards I set for being a good Metroidvania. For a small game with simple graphics and a small team, it did about as well as one could hope, especially for its short 3 to 4 hour runtime. Alright, story spoilers from here. It's goofy and silly and not serious, but if you care, skip to this timestamp on screen. Okay. As you progress, you fight the same rat for the boss of each area. The more often you fight it, the more often it slips up and talks? It turns out it's Dr. Heinrich, and he is the reason you landed here in the first place. So as you progress through the world, you find these audio logs from him. He's been stationed here on contract for a couple years to do some research on defense weapons for whoever owns this place. Though he is proud of his work, he says it's inhumane and is excited to leave when his contract ends in a year. Not just because of his work, but also because he feels ostracized by the other people on the base. Sitting alone at launch, being sent down to fix the heater cord instead of the maintenance crew, somewhat mundane stuff like that. One day he gets a dog dropped off by security and they told him that it's defective and to turn it into one of his freak experiments. The dog Barkley is his only companion and is indeed terminally ill and he can't save him. He remembers the experiment he did before where he swapped the consciousness of 2 other animals before and decides that's the only way to save Barkley. So he starts the distress signal when he finds Gary and Kiki so he can take his and Barkley's bodies for themselves. I guess before that he swapped his body with a rat and decided to test Kiki? I don't know. There are also security logs you can find about how he turned the security bots against all the staff and that they all think he has been going insane and was siphoning all the funds to save the dog, so Heinrich is probably just kind of a dick too. Anyways, he kidnaps Gary, you go to fight him, he swaps bodies with Gary, then you find him again and are forced to lose. Before he can force you to do a body swap, Barkley breaks out and saves you from Heinrich and you escape from the planet with him. And Gary is there as a rat now too. The end. I told you it wasn't very serious, and it really didn't need to be. A cool thing I like is that after you beat the game, you can start your save again, and you'll be in the ship, and you can find Barkley and Gary. Still a rat though. You know, this whole trip really sucked for Gary. He went to potentially save someone and get a promotion, and all he got was being stuck in a rat's body and a dying dog. Poor guy. Overall, a pretty solid little package if you're looking for a game to finish in an afternoon. It's cheap and pretty short. Doinksoft has a lot to be proud of here. They're also making another game called Gunbrella, and it looks like a lot of fun. Check it out sometime. I don't really have much else to say here. Got a couple other games I'm thinking about doing, but nothing has started yet. I guess that's kinda all I gotta say. Bye. Oh, and like and subscribe, maybe.